The SwitchBot K10 Plus is the smallest robot vacuum and mop that I've ever worked with. Measured by volume, the K10 Plus is half the size of other vacuums. Its base station is small too, so both the base station and the vacuum can fit in just about anywhere. The base station can hold up to 70 days worth of junk, and it also charges the relatively small 3200 milliamp hour battery on the robot vacuum. That can give you up to 150 minutes of vacuuming time, although I don't think I've needed to use anywhere near that. But with this change in size and the focus on fitting in anywhere, the K10 Plus has only 2500 pascals of suction power. That makes it much quieter than other robot vacuums, but comparatively, it's about half the suction power of some other models in this price range. So there is potential for that suction power to be too little for your home. Now there's a mop on this as well, but believe me when I say that it's non-standard and I'm not sure it's going to be successful for most of you. However, the LiDAR navigation, the connectivity with the rest of your smart home, and a really well thought out application, coupled with a pretty reasonable price tag, means that this new K10 Plus is reasonably smart. It's just not smart for everyone. Let me explain. Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm Brian from Automate Your Life, and this is our first ever smart or not video. So we're looking for feedback on the format, how you're finding this video, answering your biggest questions with SwitchBot's first ever robot vacuum. There are 5 things that I'm going to walk through to determine and showcase whether or not the K10 Plus is smart. These come from some of my own personal experiences, as well as some of the things you folks have told me that are important when it comes to robot vacuums. Number 1, how does the vacuum actually clean? If it can't clean, there's no point. Number 2, how does it fit into our lifestyle? Number 3, how hard is it to set up and use the first time? Number 4, how can you automate this chore so you're saving time in your life? And number 5, how long will it last and be useful in your home? Now let's start on that very important first point. How does the K10 actually clean? From an overall standpoint, this is a really good robot vacuum. The smaller size, coupled with the LiDAR-based navigation and really effective management of maps and the ability to get into corners and small spaces, means that this can get almost everywhere in your home and do a good job. You can make multiple maps, and then you can just switch between them and take the robot vacuum to whatever floor you'd like to clean. Plus, I found the navigation really good, and that the vacuum makes multiple passes over each part of your floor because of its small stature. This results in more of those particles lying around the floor being picked up by this vacuum. When it gets to a rug, especially a high pile rug like I have, the K10 Plus does very well, as it raises the suction power automatically. It's been very successful at cleaning my rug, which has been very problematic for most robot vacuums in my life. But where the cleaning power really falls off for me is in the mopping feature, and I don't think a lot of people are going to want to use this as a mop, despite SwitchBot's valiant attempt to do something different than the rest of the industry. Now, they include 30 mopping pads that are essentially wet wipes. You affix those to their mopping attachment, and those might last 100 to 200 square feet before they're pretty dried up or pretty dirty. Also, the mopping attachment doesn't move or buff anything, so it's really just dragging along the ground. It's essentially a Swiffer that runs out of swiffing pretty swiftly. So as far as I'm concerned, this does a better job than any robot vacuum I've had in this price category, at least when it comes to vacuuming. I'd even suggest that it's better than most units in the $1,000 price range, but when we get to mopping, I think attaching a wet wipe to your dog's behind might just be more effective. To fit into a modern lifestyle, robot vacuums have to balance a lot of different factors, and a unit like this might fit your specific home, and it might not. Questions like, can it cover your whole home? From different surfaces, multiple floors, and just how large of a home can you cover? How much will you have to manage the device, and how often will you have to help it along? How does it work for families with children and animals? And then how does the app support your management of the device? Those are all important questions for your family, and it's a tough list to balance. But let's find out how the K10 Plus does. Firstly, the K10 Plus can map multiple floors. You just bring the vacuum to the second floor and create a new map. From that point forward, you can switch between the maps and just tell it to clean. Now, SwitchBot actually tells you have to bring the base station to your second floor when you do the initial mapping of it, but I ignored that entirely and it performed just fine. Now, my second floor is mostly carpet, whereas my first floor is mostly hardwood, and I can tell you that the K10 Plus performs really well on both surfaces. The suction power isn't really high for those carpets, but as I told you, it does raise the suction power and it seems to work just fine. It also switches really well between the different surfaces, and we will talk about how it switches between mopping and vacuuming in a bit. The small footprint of this unit contributes to it working really well in smaller homes and in apartments. However, the back and forth navigation method combined with the smaller battery means that this won't be able to cover as large of a home without needing a recharge. I've seen it cover my 750 square foot main level with about half of the battery life. So you're not going to have a problem covering most homes, but you might want the robot vacuum to go over your space twice during a cleaning. And if you have a larger area, and it might have to go back and recharge in the middle of a clean. The good news is the device will go back to its base station whenever it needs to empty its contents or if it needs a recharge of the battery. And the settings even allow you to manage when it can go back out after a recharge. So you won't find this robot vacuum doing its thing at 2 a.m. unless you like that. But there's one thing that I think really affects robot vacuums today. They get stuck all the time on cords, different level surfaces, and sometimes even just objects strewn across your home. It seems like a minor annoyance to help the robot vacuum along, but I find myself then not using automation features and not allowing the robot vacuum to clean when I'm out of the home. I also then don't generally use a schedule, and I end up cleaning less often. Now, the good news is the K10 Plus doesn't get stuck, at least not often. The lower suction power seems to help with this, as it's not pulling up cords all the time. The smaller size seems to help it get up and down changes in flooring too, and it just seems to keep moving. The bad news is that the K10 Plus doesn't have perfect object avoidance. And so if you have really small objects on the ground, it will pick those up. That's probably how the technology has to work today, but even medium-sized objects, things like remotes, they'll just be pulled along and eventually dropped off wherever the robot vacuum loses it. The other problem with K10's navigation is that it will 100% fall downstairs. So when you're doing the initial mapping, you have to watch out for this, and you have to set a no-go zone as soon as you see it in the map. I've watched other content creators drop their robot vacuum down the stairs, and I had to catch mine. This should tell you everything you need to know about how navigation's being done, especially when combined with how the device runs over small to medium-sized objects. SwitchBot is using the back and forth navigation to make sure they get everything, but it's not an overly sophisticated set of sensors being used. I will say that it's quieter than other robot vacuums, and for those of you with pets and children, there is a child lock feature. You can also customize the voice on this, which is a completely unique option with some anime type voices being available.
Whoa.
And the final way that a robot vacuum is either going to fit into your lifestyle or not is based on how much maintenance you have to do. You get extras of the components that you'll eventually have to replace, but the maintenance is very minor. And the periods between doing that maintenance are pretty good. Nothing here feels amiss to me, and nothing feels like SwitchBot is trying to make money on unnecessary maintenance. So from an overall standpoint, I think it's going to fit a lot of families really well. But it's the automated features that come with a robot vacuum that turn it from something that kind of works to something that can be great or be really terrible. Of course, first impressions matter, so let's see how you get this set up and how fast you get it working in your home. So I'm just setting up the K10 in the app. So you get a couple of prompts, but now it's searching for it using Bluetooth, and then we're going to configure it and put it on my 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. Now, obviously we're going to have to map next, but it's always interesting to read what you have to do with certain robot vacuums. Like right here, they're telling you, make sure you've set no-go zones in order to avoid stairs or steps. But I think we're ready to start this bad boy. Okay, we're ready to map and clean.
To start mapping.
It's going around mapping, then it's going to do a clean. Look at its map already. Again, that's pretty accurate for over there too, which it did not spend any time. He's just in this little alcove now. I left some big stuff around. After you've done the setup and you've tried to start the robot vacuum, you're going to want to start automating it. The less you can deal with this device, the better. So let's walk through the automation options you have with the K10 Plus. Most people will just use the scheduling feature in the SwitchBot app. It's really good because not only can you set the date and time, but you can set the cleaning method, how much of the home it's going to clean, the power level, and whether it's going to clean 1 or 2 times. That simple feature allows you to deal with larger homes because you can set different rooms to be cleaned on different days. Now that's just the basic scheduling feature, as there's a whole other layer inside of the SwitchBot application. You'll notice this automation tab in their app, and if you have other products from SwitchBot, this becomes very useful. You have 2 triggers: when the vacuum starts charging or when it starts cleaning. That means you can start other things in your home, like for example, opening the curtains to give your vacuum space to clean around those. Then you have a number of actions, including starting or stopping cleaning, the same thing with charging, and controlling both the emptying feature and the cleaning power. I really like the emptying feature because it means I can make that happen when I've left the home. All of this is just what's available inside of the SwitchBot application. The vacuum also works with Amazon, but there you only get a start and a stop action, as well as a cleaning suction power command. Now, I haven't been able to get the suction power to change using a voice command with Amazon, but you will be able to do that within Amazon's routines. Google Home has a start and a stop, and it has the ability to send your device back to the base station. I have been able to do that by voice with Google, and that's a nice feature because when you use a stop command in Amazon or Samsung SmartThings, it actually just stops and sits on the floor right now. You do have Siri shortcut control, and over time, I'm sure we'll see other integrations for this robot vacuum. That's because SwitchBot has constantly improved their connectivity to other smart home systems. The other automations that are important come from the app and the settings you get there. For example, even if you're sending out the robot vacuum to do a cleaning, you can decide on all the things we talked about in the automations. That includes the power, which rooms and which areas it's going to do. And you can even set different suction powers and cleaning times per room. The device also automatically switches between vacuum and mopping modes based on you attaching that to the device. There are a couple of good automation options with the K10 Plus, and I know you guys always like automation ideas in these reviews. For me, the most important thing is that a robot vacuum runs when you're out of the home. The first way to do this is with SwitchBot's own contact sensor, which has a little button on it that lets you signify that you're leaving your home. So you press that button and then you open the door to leave, and then as the door closes, SwitchBot recognizes that as an exit event. You can use that to start your robot vacuum anytime you'd like. You can actually do the same thing with Amazon or Google. Amazon uses their guard feature to start routines, so as you or your spouse leaves the home, you're able to get that robot vacuum to start. You can do the same thing with Samsung SmartThings too, so all of these different platforms have have a really good option for starting the vacuum when you leave. Honestly, this automation section is where SwitchBot shines versus many other options available today. There's no real major platform that you're going to have difficulty getting this connected to, and the list of settings really allow you to customize how it works for your family. The final aspect to a robot vacuum is how long it's going to last. The first thing you'll have to deal with are some of those maintenance intervals. And those are pretty standard. The components are not overly expensive, and there's nothing really special about any of the components other than their size. Obviously, if you want to use that mopping feature, you're going to need more of the disposable wipes that come from SwitchBot. Well, maybe you just get some Swiffer wipes there. After that, there's nothing unique or different about the design of this that makes me feel like it's going to break down anytime soon. Everything feels like it will last well over 4 to 5 years, and I would say that SwitchBot has been very good at supporting their products for that timeline. They've also proven time and time again as a company that they will support their products for that kind of time frame, and usually beyond that. From an overall standpoint, the question of whether or not the K10 Plus is smart really comes down to how much you want to spend on a robot vacuum and whether or not you want to mop. Larger and more expensive vacuums have more suction power, and this will pull more out of carpets. The mopping function is not very useful, and I think in general, if you have a larger home, you're going to have less success with this. It's really going to work in smaller spaces, and there it becomes an incredibly smart choice. People who live in 1,000 square feet and smaller spaces will definitely find this more than enough for their home. What does make this possible in larger homes are those automation features, and SwitchBot has used their expertise in that area to make this fit more homes than I would normally recommend. I don't think there's any problem using this in a 1,500 square foot main floor and just having it scheduled to do different parts of the home at different times. The navigation method is simple, but it's really what should be happening with most robot vacuums. It drives me nuts when I watch a robot vacuum using some other algorithm and then just seeing it drive across the home and missing things. And I say that with all the knowledge that this is not the most sophisticated sensor system. SwitchBot hasn't tried to stop this unit from running over small and medium objects, and they haven't stopped it from potentially falling downstairs. You have to deal with those things, and if you're not willing to pick up some of those objects before you start the vacuum, or you're not willing to watch it the first time it maps, then this isn't the robot vacuum for you. The design of the unit is very good, and the small footprint really helps this to be tucked away and be invisible in a world where we regularly see smart vacuums and their base stations being double and triple the size. The maintenance is what we expect, and I think longevity is going to be very good. So if you want that mop feature, you're going to have to look elsewhere. But if you want a really good robot vacuum that is actually very smart, check this one out in the links below. Otherwise, if you're still looking for some better features or you want a bigger unit that does more, the playlist on screen right now shows all of our other reviews of robot vacuums. This includes some units in the $2,000 price range all the way down to this price category. So check those out right there. Otherwise, thanks for watching today. And of course, live smart.